If you or someone you know has diabetes, you may have built up an extra supply of test strips and lancets. That's where we come in. We'll buy the supplies that you don't need and resell them to those in need to prevent waste. Help us make diabetes management more affordable. Visit us at teststripswithaz.com.
All right, so if you've been watching Dana White's Contender series, a whopping 9 UFC contracts have been awarded to fighters over the last 8 days as we record this. And in many people's eyes, the most impressive performance of all the contract winners belongs to the man joining me on the program right now, Joe Solecki, who submitted James Wallace in the first round of the Contender Series 19 headliner last week in Las Vegas. Welcome to the UFC, Joe Solecki. How are you, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, it's been a crazy week in one day, so yeah, it's been just trying to soak it all in.
When I say those words, welcome to the UFC, I know it doesn't have the same, intensity as Dana White saying it, but how sweet is that to hear?
No, yeah, I don't think I'll ever get tired of that, and no, it's sweet hearing from anybody, man. It's been my goal since I started training when I was 6, so I saw my first UFC at maybe 10, so we'll say since I was 10 years old, so that's 15 years, 16 years in the making, so no, yeah, I'm never going to get tired of hearing that. I just want to make sure that I keep hearing that I'm in the UFC and that I, just keep everything that got me here and keep working hard and stay here. That's going to be the hardest part.
Do you remember which card that was when you were 10 years old? Do you remember which fight really stuck out to you?
Yes. So we would go to Blockbuster, like every other family, once a week or whatever, and rent a video game and a movie, whatever. And I remember the first card I saw, it wasn't like the most recent one. So the first one I saw was a VHS. It was Young Guns. I think it was UFC 18 or 19 with Tito. And I'm only 10. And I popped it in because, we were doing jiu-jitsu, so my parents let me rent it. They didn't know. And, man, he puts Guy Mesger to sleep. He does the finger guns, and he puts up the middle finger. And I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to be watching this, And then the most recent one to that time that me and my brother rented, it was a DVD. It was UFC 46 Supernatural. It was Randy, Vitor. I think there was Matt Serra went against Ceruto, or maybe Frank Trigg. Jeff Kern was on there. I remember that one, and then after that we ran a UFC 48. And those, man, I was hooked. It was a done deal from that point. Randy, Tito, the whole Chuck Tito saga, man, couldn't get enough.
So you knew after watching those videos and those DVDs that this is what you wanted to do? Yeah,
I don't think I thought it was reality because I was so bad at jiu-jitsu. Like I competed every year, once a year or so until I got older, but every year from 6 to 16. And I literally, people think I'm joking, I did not win one tournament. I might have won a random match here or there, but there was a lot of participation medals, a lot of one and dones, and a lot of long rides back down the Garden State Parkway back home, crying into a milkshake. But it definitely was what I always wanted. I don't know how I thought this would ever happen, but it was definitely my dream for sure.
After going through all that with the jiu-jitsu tournaments, the first one you won, how sweet did that milkshake taste?
Oh, so good, man. Yeah, I mean, gosh, I went to a Naga when I was 15 with my brother, and because I was a teen competing in the adult division, I got to do like the beginner division, because when you bump into adult, you kind of go to a lower bracket than you would be. And in reality, I beat 2 white belts and have been training for 10 years, but oh man, you could have told me anything. I was so excited. And gosh, I think that was the beginning of everything. My brother took me to the adult day because we couldn't go. It was a 2-day tournament. So I had to compete in the adult division. I was, probably just as nervous as I was for last week. And same thing, man. These little things, they just boost you up. And I think that win carried me for the next 5 years of losing. And it just kept me going. So everything happens for a reason. It all just unfolded really funny, but it was worth the 10-year wait to get that first big tournament win.
You said something right off the bat when I asked you about the welcome to the UFC question, because it's sort of a mixed bag when it comes to earning that contract. And what I mean by that is, and you kind of touched on this, obviously it's fantastic. It's huge to have a great performance on the Contender Series and hear Dana White say your name and get a contract. But, for a lot of guys and gals that I've talked to, that's just the first step. Like, it's wonderful, but until they get in the octagon and get a win for the UFC, it doesn't become real. You know what I mean? Like, do you feel the same way that, this is awesome, I've taken a huge step, but I'm not quite there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think there'll be maybe a little less nerves going into the fight because I know it's a UFC fight, and at least I will have been there and fighting at the highest level. But here's the thing, like I went to college, but I didn't finish college. So I don't tell anybody or put on a resume that I went to Coastal Carolina because I didn't finish, you know? And I think that'd be the same thing as going in the UFC and going like 2 and out, you know, losing your first 2 and getting cut. And that's not something you want to be proud of and talk about. I mean, maybe getting there is an accomplishment in itself. And I think because I went on the Contender series and got to win and, you know, got to get that win on TV, and that's a part of my journey, and that's exciting. And that's something I'll be excited to show my grandkids one day. But that's not where the story can end, you know, and I have to do everything I can to make sure I get that win, get to the next level, get through the first contract, get a second, you know, and all this is becoming real now where I can really set up my little family that I'm trying to start. And, you know, it's all just the beginning. And I really need to remember that is it's like going pro now. You know, when I went pro, my first pro fight, I didn't want to, I so badly wanted to get that first win because I would not call myself a pro if I went 0-1 and stopped, you know. Same thing here. I'm not going to be a UFC veteran if I go 0-1 in the UFC and they cut me. So I'm just taking that same approach, and I think that's what's got me here, and it's what's going to keep me to the next level and the next level and all the way into the top 15 and so on, you know.
You mentioned either during the post-fight interview with Laura Sanko or after you got the contract that you fought in front of Dana before. You had a similar submission. I think it was part of the Looking for a Fight series. For those who don't know that story, when did that happen, and what was that night like for you knowing that Dana would be there?
Yeah, so that was February 2017. So I was not even a pro for 6 months at that point in time. But that was my third pro fight. Not as nerve-wracking as the Contender series or anything because I know that no matter what I do that night at 155, you're not getting signed at 3-0, you know. So, but I knew that would be the foundation for the future as far as maybe I could have that in the holster of saying, well, I fought in front of Dana White once, and maybe he would remember if I stood out. Yeah, I ended up finishing the guy, I think maybe 90 seconds or so with a rear naked choke, quick back take. And, you know, I took my picture with him afterward, and I was just like, hey, like I fought tonight. I didn't know if you remembered or not. And he was like, oh, no, it was fantastic. You know, just get more fights. And I was like, oh, I'm going to. And then, oddly enough, my old former boss took a picture with him that night, too, and posted it. It was like, Joe Solecki's current boss and future boss, you know. And but it was just exciting. It was a little boost to be like, oh, well, you know, I'm a big believer in, like, setting goals and, you know, going after them. And having a picture to be like, oh, well, you know, I posted it that next Monday. I was like, I'm going to work for this guy one day. You know, I think if you put stuff out there, you got to go do it. So it was cool, you know, but I never made the episode of Looking for a Fight, even though I had a good submission. They focused on a guy that had ties to some of the guys on the show already and some UFC vets. He was like 0-1, and he went to a draw that night, so he was 0-1-1. They focused mainly on him, you know, which is kind of weird, but that's how it goes. And then Jared Gordon from CFFC, who won that night, who's a stud, you know, and he got some well-deserved press too. So, yeah, it was just cool to have gone through that experience, though, had the nerves of Dana being there, and I think it did kind of help me with fighting in front of him and McMahon and Sean Shelby.
I'm not sure how it works because obviously I'm not a fighter and I'm not fighting on the Contender series anytime soon, but do you meet with Dana before the fight, or is it the first time you see him once you get out there right before you get into the octagon?
Yeah, so for our episode, I was kind of wondering the same because, you know, at the UFCs, I guess he grabs all the fighters, gives them a big pep talk about how they need to put on a show and yada, yada. But, no, with this week, at least with my week, we didn't talk to really anybody like that beforehand, none of the matchmakers or anything like that. When we were in a really big room waiting to be drug tested, and Bisping walked through a couple times, and all he said was, what's up, guys, and kept walking. But, yeah, we didn't sit down with anybody, have any meeting or anything like that, which is good, honestly. Like, that first fight, I'd rather just have the jitters of fighting in front of Dana. I don't need the whole pressure of talking to him beforehand. And then I didn't get to grab him afterward. I mean, he's a busy guy, man. As soon as he gave the contracts, he was out of there. I think the next night was the ESPY Awards and stuff, so they're probably headed there, you know. It's a busy guy. I can't even imagine. Just in my little schedule the last week, which has been not that much, I've done, like, I think maybe like 8, you know, interviews like this, or like the news came to the gym yesterday. That's been hectic. I couldn't imagine being Dana White or like Conor McGregor. So those guys should get a pass on not being able to spend too much time with one person, you know. They're busy people, and they're making the fight world go around right now. So it's all good. Yeah, it was interesting, though. We didn't see him until afterward.
Yeah, I didn't know if he like saw you in the room and pointed you out. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I remember you from a couple of years ago." But you know, your win a couple weeks back, 8 days ago, was really impressive for a number of reasons. For me, because the fact that James Wallace is such a tough, in-your-face guy, he'd never been finished in a fight before. So to go out there and be as dominant as you were, you showed a lot with your striking game. I think that surprised a lot of people. But obviously, once you got into the ground, you did what you always do, and it was a really special performance, in my opinion. I know, with you guys and gals in the fight game, you are your own worst critics all the time. But you had to have been extremely satisfied with your performance last week, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple things that I saw, that I should have done maybe differently that I got away with, and they worked out for the better. But, there was a couple things. But, yeah, I was definitely satisfied. And I think knowing, watching that build up to the fight, the eye test is something you can always go off of. And when I watched, James Wallace's videos, like, he was a stud. He's submitting people in the first round. And, but, I was seeing some things maybe strategically that I was like, well, I think I'm a higher level of grappler than the guys he's faced. So he's submitting a lot of guys off his back, or he's, maybe failing a submission. They're putting themselves back into it. And it's that weird lead up to the fight where you're like, I know I don't do those things, but maybe he's so good and I'm going to fall into a triangle, or maybe his traps are so good. So it is a weird little, your mind plays tricks on you going in. But something my coach was telling me going in, John Salter, he's like, anybody that's going to do that to you on the ground and make it a tough night for you and put you in submissions, make you work out, he's like, you already know the names of those people, whether they're in sport jiu-jitsu or MMA. And he's like, don't forget that. And that gave me a lot of confidence, and I think that's something I wouldn't have told myself, because I really do see myself differently, and I'm really hard on myself. And but him saying that gave me a big vote of confidence to go out there and take the fight wherever. And I know that, even if he was better on the ground, he's not going to do anything I haven't seen. I'll be able to work out of it and either get back to the feet or capitalize on the ground. That's what happened. We got to let it go a little bit early on, and then we ended up on the floor. And I just think that was experience for me. He's been training and fighting a long time, but I spent a long part of my life just doing jiu-jitsu. So that mixed in with the wrestling and the punches, I think it makes it a little easier sometimes. That's kind of how it went. I was happy.
In a lot of ways, I saw a lot of myself in you when you spoke about how supportive your wife has been throughout your career. I mean, personally, I just pivoted to covering MMA on a full-time basis. It's been less than a month for me. Wow. And, I'm obviously not 100% in the same boat as you. I'm not getting punched in the face. I'm not putting my body through hell all the time. I didn't do years and years of jiu-jitsu tournaments, winning, losing, going through everything you've gone through. But the grind to, put money in the bank is certainly real. And my wife basically told me, go get it, make it happen. And that means the world to me. Yeah. I remember Justin Timberlake saying not too long ago, when he got one of those like celebrity doctorates from Berklee School of Music, he said something to the effect of, find someone who is better than you, marry her, and then hold on to her forever. And that was like a quote that really stuck out to me. It sounds to me like you've done exactly that. Yeah.
And then you said, you're not fighting or anything, but in reality, fighting's a parallel for life. It's a metaphor for life. That's why people love fighting. More people have drawn inspiration from the Rocky movies that aren't fighters than people that are fighters. A lot of fighters look at it and go, that's a cheesy. It's not like fighting. But people, I'm from outside the Philadelphia area, and man, you should see people that travel the world to come see the statue at the Art Museum, because they took something from it, whether they finished their degree because of it or they didn't give up at their job, whatever it is. So, fighting's not any tougher. You write and I fight, and writing probably is just difficult for you as fighting is for me, because it's what we do. So it is the same. You need that support. And my wife, man, she's a rock star, man. She hustles every single day. And I mean, since the beginning, it's crazy. I sat her down on our second date, and I was doing jiu-jitsu competitively at that time. It was August 1st. I fought in October. It was probably 3 weeks before I took my first fight. And I sat her down, was talking about jiu-jitsu, and I was like, look, I am obsessed with this. I'm trying to be a world champion, yada, yada. It's going to be a lot of me not being able to do stuff. I don't drink. I don't do anything. I don't really go out. Are you cool with that? Because I knew she was really important to me after one date. And I knew that if I was going to make this work, she needed to know that I don't have any vices except that. And that it could turn into something good, but there's no promise to that. And then 3 weeks in, I got an offer to take a fight, and I took it, after talking to her. And we've been at it since. I was working part-time, almost full-time when I was living in Myrtle Beach, my first 6 pro fights. And then after that, we went to the UFC in Charlotte, where, it's not too far from where we lived in Myrtle Beach. And I was going back and forth training an hour and a half in North Carolina with John Salter, who I train with full-time now. And we went, and it was so funny, man. I think just these weird little signs happen for you. We were getting ready to leave for the fights, and we went to move our hamper, and out of the corner in our apartment was like 50 roaches just crawling out. And I remember just feeling like a sack of garbage and being like, man, like, I could be working at my job now. It's almost full time, waiting tables at night. We could be putting money away, living in a nicer place, and all these things. And I was so humiliated. And whatever, we got that cleaned up that night. We hit the road, went to Charlotte, watched the UFC, and I was watching the guys that were closer to my weight class, and we were sitting up in the nosebleeds, and I was like, I looked at her and I was like, I can do this, and we had dabbled with the idea of moving to Wilmington and training with Salter and the guys down there, and it was one of those things where I came home and I told my bosses, because they were really into my career, I was like, look, I'm either going to quit or I'm going to move and do this full time, but I'm not going to do this half-hearted. I'm going to train. I'm going to, you need to make money, but I'm just going to do odd jobs instead. I needed to train full time because I just needed to know, win, lose, or draw. I needed to know if I could get there or not. And I believed I could, And she stood by me through everything, man. It's been unreal, and it's so cliche, and it's so this and so that. And usually when people put out on social media how much their spouse means to them, it's usually the opposite. They're projecting, they're having trouble or something like that. But I try and pick and choose when I put out there how important to me she is, but I think the fight was the most important time, because that contract is half hers as it is mine, She may not be in there fighting, but gosh, she has carried the team, man. It's been unreal, and just lucky to have her, man. She's been there the whole time, and hopefully now I can take over the slack and give her the life that she deserves, because she doesn't really want much. She doesn't ask for much, and that's why she deserves everything.
Did it ever get to that point too? Because I know you saw that crossroads. It's either go one way or go the other way. And obviously it comes to a point where you're like, all right, realistically, I could do this for this long, but then like I have to put kind of a time frame on this thing. Did you set a time frame to yourself at that point? Did you say like, hey, listen, if I'm not in the UFC in 2 or 3 years, like, maybe I'll have to go a different direction. Like, what were those conversations like?
Yeah. I'm an idiot sometimes with my goal setting. I'm not the most confident person. Like, I don't have all this pride. I think I have dignity, but I don't have pride. I'm not like this, like, boastful, I'll beat that guy, this guy. Like, you could put, a 10-year-old kid on the other side of the tail of the tape, and I'd be like, man, well, I saw a match, and he was pretty fast. Like, that's just how I live my life, But when it comes to goals, I'm really hard on myself. And my idiot self set a goal to be in a big promotion by 25. I'll be 26 in a month and 10 days. So, yeah, I wrote that down at some point in time, and we, I had a couple goals. One was just to move cities, just because we wanted to live somewhere else, because my wife had lived in Myrtle Beach her whole life. One was to, save for an engagement ring and then get married, and then the other one was to be in a big promotion by 25. And when we moved, she found that book, and it was right after my 25th birthday, and I was like, oh crap, all right, time's ticking. I was gonna extend that win, lose, or draw, but it was just like, wow, like, okay. And then, when I started fighting, I went 3-0, all finishes. My first 5 amateur fights were all finishes. I was like, this is great. I'm watching the Conor McGregor documentary going, oh, man, like, I'm going to do what he did. I can see it just like he did, and this and that. I'm so motivated. And then I lost the first time, and I was like, oh, you're not a guy that won 3 times. You're a guy that's lost once. Can you even do this at the highest levels, this and that? Came back, won 2 fights, and then it'll be a year and 4 days from now. It'll be a year from I got starched in front of everybody. I was winning the fight. Really tough opponent. It was the 2 best rounds of my career up to that point. And then my legs got tired. I planted my feet for a second, and he knocked me into, the shadow realm. And we had a moment. We had a moment in the hotel there. Everyone was in the room, making sure they were checking on me. We were going to eat some pizza or something, drown our sorrows in junk food. But I went in the bathroom for a minute. I was getting ready to hop in the shower. My wife came in, and we just sat there and we cried together, for like 5 minutes. And it was a crossroads where it's like, man, like, this is not just you. This is other people. My boxing coach putting his time into me with nothing in return. I couldn't afford to pay him for the sessions. And, it was just the payoff of, hey, like, hopefully I'll make some money and be able to pay you back, and just all the people, man. And that weighed on me a lot at that point. And quitting was literally every other day probably. I was thinking about, if I don't win this fight, I need to quit or that, and that's really when my wife picked up the slack more than anything. Forget, making sure our bills are covered if I couldn't and all that stuff. She picked up the slack when I didn't believe anymore, because it's easy to lose that confidence quick. and think you're a bum or think you're just a guy that lost twice. And she picked up the slack. I would go to her and be like, hey, like, I don't think I need to quit if I lose this next fight. She'd be like, no, like, no one ever said anything about that. Why are you thinking about that? Like, I don't think you need to quit ever. You have too much left to do. And I think a lot of people, whether it's friends, whether it's family, whether it's spouse, take the opposite end of that and be like, hey, man, how long are we going to live like this? And I think that, being able to get to the UFC maybe shows that I can be one of the 1 or 2% of an athlete in this sport, but I think she's the 1% of 1% of people, and especially in this day and age of social media and all of this and people having all these options, and people, it'd be so easy to walk away from someone like me that wasn't doing much with my life from the outside looking in, and I thought about quitting every single day, and that never even crossed her mind. So it was a team effort for sure.
Would you have this road any other way? I mean, like in hindsight, hindsight's such a fickle beast. You could be 11-0 and got the UFC contract and it would be a really cool thing, but going through what you've gone through, going through the losses, going through the ups and downs, moving the hamper over and seeing roaches to get to this point, would you have it any other way at this point? Is this the story that was supposed to be written, right?
This is exactly it, man. And it's so funny. I used to have a teammate at an old gym I used to train at. And I love movies. I'm a huge movie guy. I love quoting movies. I love movies. And I'd always be like, oh, this is just like that movie, yada, yada. And he'd be like, hey, man, life's not a movie. And I would always fire back in the same thing. I'd say, your life's not a movie, And I think the second you stop believing you can make these things happen, they stop happening, And my road wasn't easy in jiu-jitsu growing up, It all played out something that wasn't real. I was sneaking away to drive 4 hours with my teammates. I was the oldest. It was me, my buddy Andrew Richardson, who trains Team Alpha Mountain. He's a good pro. And then our buddy John Battle, who's a good jiu-jitsu competitor. And I was the oldest out of the three of us. I just got my license. I was 17. And I'm sneaking away. Instead of sneaking to parties and stuff, we're sneaking to drive from Jersey to Virginia to compete without my parents finding out I had an extra person in the car that I shouldn't have had. One. And, everything's been like that. I wouldn't want it any other way, man. I've never been a guy with great skill off the bat. I think I learn quickly and I work hard. But it'd be ludicrous for me to have gone 9-0 and get signed to the UFC and just have this natural progression to the top. That wouldn't be me, And I think I grew up on Rocky. I grew up watching movies like that and Vision Quest and all these things where the up and down and up and down. And I wouldn't want my life any other way, man. Now I hope it's a lot of ups. But, I want to be able to inspire people. I want to be able to motivate people because I think people see that I'm just like some regular guy. I'm not some freak athlete. And, I think I'm an okay athlete and I work hard and I become a better athlete. But I'm not some natural talent, man. I think people can relate to that. And down the long run, that's going to let me relate to more people, whether I can go speak at school.
Uh-oh.
Jiu-jitsu and training, and my old instructor was the same way, so I followed his example. Well, I can be that example now, and hopefully I can do good enough where it can show them what you can do with that, And if I was just some freak talent like a John Jones or someone like that, people chalk it up to, well, he's John Jones. I could never do that. For some reason, and I'm glad they do, people look at me and are like, well, I can do what he's doing, And that's how it should be. That's exactly how I want my life to go, man. I want to be the everyday man, the blue-collar guy out there hustling and grinding every single day.
So now that you've cleared this hurdle, you're in the UFC. In a perfect world, when would you like to make your debut? Is there any card that's on the schedule right now? You're like, yep, I want to be on that one.
Yeah, I love boxing, man. I'm a jiu-jitsu guy at heart, but I love watching old boxing fights. It's so funny. I send my teammates clips of like black and white fights. I'm like, look at the technique here. I'm a nut with that. I love watching old fights like that. And where's the bigger old school boxing place in Madison Square Garden? I'm from New Jersey, not North Jersey, South. So Philly would be cool, but that's not coming up. Man, growing up, that's what it's all about, And I would love to fight on that Madison Square Garden card. I said it in the post-fight interview that would be awesome. But I've been fighting in the same places: Philly, Atlantic City, and South and North Carolina. Anywhere the UFC goes is somewhere I've never seen, I'm sure. Or even if I go to Vegas, at least I'll get to fight in T-Mobile this time. So any of those cards would be amazing, man. Beggars can't be choosers. But in a perfect world, man, the first movie's over. It ends with me, rah-rah, in Dana White Contender Series. And the second one starts out me training for Madison Square Garden debut and being the hero there and bringing all my family, my team, and everybody there would be unreal. But, hey, whatever they got, I'm ready to go.
You know what? Boston's not too far away from New York, and that'd be a lot of fun, UFC. Too.
That's the first UFC. I've only been to 2 UFCs, and one was on my 17th birthday, Grappler's Quest tournament, Fan Expo, all that was at the UFC. So we did that night, went to the UFC. And oddly enough, my coach now, John Salter, fought there. He was my age at the time. And he fought Dan Miller. And I'm from New Jersey. I was not going to root for some guy from Alabama who was a wrestler. You know, I always lost to wrestlers. I'm not going to root for a wrestler from the South. I'm rooting for the Jersey guy that goes for submissions, you know. And full circle, now that's my coach, you know, and that's the only UFC I went to before last year. So I would love to fight in Boston, too. Boston's a great fighting city. And, man, any of these big cities with history, I'm down. It'd be amazing.
Do you have an opponent in mind? Is there anyone in that loaded division right now that you can, see yourself getting in there for your debut? Realistically, I mean, obviously you're not going to, fight for the belt right now, but and you know that. But is there anybody you're looking at in that division? Be like, oh, that'd be a fun one to debut with.
Yeah, we're not worried about those guys. I don't want Khabib to know I exist. Hopefully he's retired. I think he's had 2 more fights, so I should be good. But no, there's guys that are coming off the Contender Series or even last season. I have my eye on people that I think might be good matchups or tough matchups, but no, I'm not all worried about that, man, because you know what? It's so funny. You get these things in your mind, and they come up with some guy you never heard of or the guy that you didn't think about. And I'm not worried about any of that, man. I'm really trying to get this experience, get these wins, and slowly creep my way to the top 15 so that when I get there, like I said, maybe a couple of years ago getting here would have been a win or getting a win here would have been a win. But now I really do believe in my heart of hearts here that I can be one of the best in the world one day. And I think the way to do that is slow and steady and just take what they give and whatever the UFC says. And I think from the reactions I've gotten and the the good publicity that even the UFC gave me, like with they gave me an interview at UFC.com yesterday and all this stuff, I'm thinking maybe they see that potential too. And, they usually work those guys the way we should be worked, which is good challenges at the right times and just getting that big challenge to really step up to the plate and show what I can do. I know anybody in this division in the UFC is going to be a challenge, and that's what I want, and that's what I need to get better. So anybody's going to be good, man.
I know we've been talking for a while, and I appreciate your patience and hanging on here. But since we've learned that you're a true student of the game. You went to Blockbuster to rent videos. Seeing what Uriah Faber did on Saturday, kind of turning back the clock and picking up a big win over a really tough guy, up and comer Ricky Simone. Seeing that, being a purist of the sport and of the martial arts, seeing what Uriah Faber did, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was awesome, man. Yeah, I caught the highlights, and it was absolutely incredible. Like I said, my buddy trains out there, and he's always talking about what a great guy Uriah Faber is and how much, his energy is contagious in the gym. He's always inviting me out. I've never been able to afford to fly out to California for a week, but maybe soon on like a training trip to go visit my buddy out there and see them. But man, just unreal. It's so great to see one of the good guys coming back on his terms, getting the win, looking like he didn't miss a beat. You can't beat that, man. From the WEC to the UFC, that guy's fought everybody. Yeah, I'm a big fan of all those guys from that generation, and I mean he's from our generation too because he's still smashing guys. So yeah, it was awesome.
Joe Solecki joining us on the program, one of the newest members of the UFC's lightweight division. Great chat with you, Joe. Before we get out of here, let the folks know where they can follow you on this new journey of yours via social media, any shout-outs, anything else you want to get off your chest, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook as my name, but that's oddly enough, that is kind of filling up fast. I've been accepting everybody that adds me, but I think you run out of room, and I'm almost there, I think. But I have a fan page on there, Joe Solecki MMA. And I am trying to post on there more. Keep my fighting stuff on there, my personal stuff on my personal page. I think that'll be best. On Instagram, I'm just at Joe Solecki. And Twitter, I don't really use. I go on there every UFC fight night to watch the fights. But maybe now I'll try and tweet out some thoughts on the fight stuff if anybody cares. I have like 300 followers. It's no big deal. My wife got a lot of love on Twitter and some hate from the other night, which I thought was hilarious. They were someone was like, oh, she's just happy she doesn't have to pay all the bills anymore. I was dying at that one. And then somebody else said, I'm a huge Eddie Alvarez fan, so this is actually a compliment. Someone was like, I thought when Alvarez left the UFC, the era of screaming wife was over. I don't want Solecki in the UFC because it may have just begun. And I was dying at that. But, I'm usually just Instagram and Facebook, but I'll post something on Twitter here or there. I just want to shout out. Thanks for having me on, man. FloCombat's awesome. I always follow everything that you guys do. Just my team, man. I've been long-winded in some of the interviews, so I'll keep it short. But, man, I couldn't do it without these guys. Right now, I'm at Fitness Edge MMA in Myrtle Beach. I train here twice a week. This is my home gym before I left Myrtle Beach, and it's still home for me, man. We got guys coming out of here. We have Tomar Washington, who just won the King of the Cage heavyweight title. And people don't know this. He posted it on social media, so they know now. But he was diagnosed with cancer like 6 weeks before that fight, and he fought.
Wow.
And he won by knockout. Yeah, he had it in his kidney. He had his kidney removed right after the fight. He's on the mend. I'm sure he's going to be defending that belt pretty soon here when he's better. Crazy, man. We got Cody Jones out of here. He fought in Bellator. He's going to be back for sure, man. He's fighting, staying active. Jordan Weeks, Clifton Davis, all those guys. Mike Kelly, the owner of the gym, he's great. He flew out to watch the fight. He was trained at the PI, working with the strength and conditioning coach there, so he could bring that back for us. Can't thank these guys enough, man. My boxing coach is something out of a movie, man. He's the best. One of my best friends in the world. He believes in me through and through. We haven't even scratched the surface on what we can do, and he's one of the main reasons I'm still fighting, because he saw what I could be, much like my wife did. He always said the same thing. He never talked about our sessions now. He just talked about how much better we were going to get, and we're back to work together, and it's going to be great. John Salter, I couldn't do it without him and Corey Crumpler, man. They are the head guys down at Salty Dog Jiu-Jitsu in Wilmington, North Carolina. Man, they are mean dudes when you're training, and they're two of the nicest guys in the world when you're not. They're like mean big brothers, bro. They just beat me up and make me feel like I shouldn't have a UFC contract. And, John's coming for that belt in Bellator, very, very soon. I think he should get the shot at Lovato next, but who am I to call that? And then Corey is going to be fighting real soon. He's a 1-0 pro. He's been on hiatus for 3 years or 4 years. And, man, there's no doubt in my mind he could be top 15 in the UFC, top guy in Bellator, as is. So be on the lookout for those guys, man. Everybody at Salty Dog Jiu-Jitsu. And I really want to thank the guys at Jim O in Charlotte. Jeff Jim O is an absolute genius, man. It's a little hub outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, in Gastonia. The stuff they're doing inside that little gym is special, man. And it's a little dark room with just tough dudes. We've got there's a couple guys out there in the UFC. You got Brian Barberina and Scott Holtzman. And then we have Impa's going to be on the Contender Series coming up August 27th. He's been fighting 2 years. He's 5-0 as a pro on the Contender Series. Unreal.
Crazy.
I really want to thank those guys, man. They've been fantastic. And that was a huge missing piece in our training camp for me and for John. We've been going up there a lot. And I've been spending, 2 days a week at my home base in Wilmington, 2 days a week in Myrtle Beach, Charlotte 2 days a week, which is about 4 hours away, and then back for the last day of the week back in Wilmington. So it's just been these weird puzzle pieces that I think finally formulated together, man. I can't thank them enough. And I got to thank my wife. Unreal, man. I love her to death. She hears us every single day. Sometimes she's not a morning person, so sometimes I'll tell her that in the morning and she'll shoot me away. But, I couldn't do it without her. She knows that. And I got to thank my dogs. They don't watch FloCombat. But, man, I do all these interviews, man. We don't have kids yet, We have two – they're like kids, but we have 2 dogs. I never shout them out, man. So I want to thank everybody that loves and supports me. I love them back, and I've been blessed. It's great. Thanks for having me, man.
Making history here, shouting out the dogs. I love it, man. Really great stuff, Joe. I appreciate you opening up and talking about everything. It was awesome, and I always believe that the best interviews are not interviews at all. I don't feel like this is an interview. I think we were just 2 guys having a conversation. I think that's the best way to do it. So all the best to you. We look forward to seeing you in the Octagon soon, hopefully up here in Massachusetts.
Absolutely, man. Sounds great. Thanks so much.